Welcome back. This is episode 6 of a special series where Johannes and I take his new book, Introduction to Supply Chain, and we go through the ideas chapter by chapter. For this series, I assume a very specific position. Someone who does not know Lokad, doesn't know Johannes, certainly hasn't worked at Lokad for 3.5 years. I am, in this series, one of the 10 million or so average practitioners in the world who might see the book, perhaps on Amazon, where it's widely available, start reading and have questions. I take those questions and I bring them to Johannes. Now, as I said, this is episode 6. That means there were 5 before this one. If you haven't seen them, I kindly suggest you watch those first because there will be things that we mentioned today, in fact, in the first few questions, that reference things we talked about previously. And with that out of the way, Johannes, good to see you again. So, chapter 6 is cryptically called intelligence. Now, I know in chapter 5, we talked about, data, information, and knowledge. And now we're moving on to intelligence. So as concretely as possible, what is the core thesis of chapter 6, intelligence, and how does it build on what we've covered already?
Intelligence is the glue. It's what we have established the goal in the chapter economics. The goal is to maximize rate of return. That's a given. And in the previous chapter, information, we have seen that we have, I would say, the ingredients. Ingredient is information. So now we know what we want to do, rate of return, and we have kind of gathered all the relevant information with clarified understanding of what is data, what is information. So we have the thing, and now the only missing ingredient is very smart execution. But what do we mean by smart exactly? You see, obviously, if you're speaking about a person, you would say, oh, that's someone who is kind of clever and whatnot. But you have plenty of imprecise definitions. And people say, oh, we like most companies say, oh, we hire talented, smart people.
Which may be true.
Which might be true, yes. And certainly some very successful company do. But it is not a very actionable definition because when you fundamentally ask people, but how do you define intelligence? They basically say, I don't know, but I can recognize it when I see it in a fellow human. And to be fair, that's also kind of true.
It's a standard, I think.
So now, but this is not a very actionable, practical definition because we live in a world where software is very important. That's what I say. It's a statement. You know, those computers, they are not a detail of the supply chain landscape. They are the landscape to a large extent, and that's what I described, saying that supply chains can only be observed through essentially electronic records. So the software part is not like a detail. It's literally the foundational layer. You can only see realistically your supply chain through those electronic lenses. And guess what? Those computers, they can also, in some forms, deliver intelligence, and they already do. Arithmetics is clearly some kind of smart information processing. People could say, oh, it's just mechanical, but the reality was, until the late 70s, it was actually people with degrees doing the calculations. So clearly, computers already managed to, relieve us from a burden of, I would say, the intelligence of the information processing. Sure, the most mechanical parts of that with arithmetics, but now we need to, discuss at the point of this chapter of what is left on the table. What is we have computers that they can be kind of half smart machines. What does that mean? And what is the role of the human intelligence in all of that? And let's clarify even what do we mean by intelligence, because we need to have an understanding that goes beyond the I will tell you when I see it. It's just, this definition is just so not actionable that it's impractical.
Well, there's a few points there, and I've already written down some notes, so I'm already off the prepared questions. But there's an important distinction, I think, to be drawn when you talk about intelligence. And you made a good point right at the start about, you're a company, a big company, you hire intelligent people. And that might be true. One of the points in the book in this chapter that you cover is what is intelligence in the specific context of executing the day-to-day decisions required to operate a supply chain profitably? And do you need that human level intelligence for that? Do we already have software that can execute that level of intelligence reliably and at scale? And I think you very much argue the latter, and that we've had it for many, 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 many decades.
Yes, and you see, first, I do not want to have a human-centric definition of intelligence, because the problem is that
your definition is not human-centric.
Then you end up with such a problem, because you end up, what is a human? It's obviously, this question is very interesting at a philosophical level, but it's not a supply chain question. So I try to de-entangle, and thus I'm not trying to define what humanity is, the soul, the consciousness, all of that. Those are incredibly important concerns, but they are not supply chain concerns.
You tie it to profitability.
And so, exactly. So I tie everything down to profitability. I have explained in chapter 3 that epistemology, that we have supply chain as applied economics.
Yes.
And
that's chapter 4. Sorry, chapter 4 is economics.
So, yes, and then we have chapter 4 where I expand on economics.
Yep.
And so I say, what does that mean to operate intelligently? It's just to generate decisions that are very profitable, that maximize this rate of return. So literally, in this book, in my book, quite literally, I equate intelligence in the supply chain context with the capacity to generate profits.
Yeah.
And that's so you want to turn this raw information into essentially profits by picking the right decisions. And I will say, that will be my decision. My definition, it's very operational, that if you have something that generates more profits, then it is more intelligent. If it generates better decisions that turn out to be more profitable, it is more intelligent, no matter what it looks like. If the thing that generates more profits is using basic percentages, then those basic percentages are smarter. That's the way I approach the problem, so that I can have a definition that is very grounded. And this definition of intelligence, it is from the perspective of what we need for supply chain. It is not, again, we are not here trying to solve the philosophical problem of human intelligence. We are trying to clarify what is the next ingredient once you have the information, the raw information about everything that you can possibly, source about the state of your supply chain, the state of the market, state of your clients, suppliers, etc. Once you have all this information gathered, how do you convert this information into decisions?
Yes.
And I'm saying this is where intelligence takes place. That's the glue, the magic that will convert one from the later.
Well, actually, I found the quote, but I already actually had it in my notes. So just for a bit of context, you write in the book, supply chain demands substantial intelligence to execute profitably, and intelligence, your definition, is the capacity to make choices that yield superior future rewards. Now, someone might say, well, we already have non-software systems for that. Like, we have our human-centric processes to arrive at decisions that yield superior future rewards. So how do you respond to that?
Again, I would say, yes. But now, is it smart? Does it generate all the profits that it could? You see?
So it's a comparative point you're making.
Yes, yeah.
Two things can be good, but one's better than the other.
Exactly. I would say, that the thing is that resources are being allocated.
Yes.
You see, so the stuff is being bought, transported, transformed, distributed, etc. So the allocations of resources happen. The question is that, do they happen intelligently? Do they happen profitably? And
or as profitably as possible.
Exactly, as profitably. So it is always the crux is always a counterfactual. It is about if you are leaving options for profits on the table and they are very obvious, that is, that's why you would say, oh, you are doing something dumb, because you are leaving so much money on the table. You see, so it's always comparative. So now, if we have people who are already doing that, fine. The question is the comparison between what they are doing collectively, so it's kind of a collective intelligence, and what anything else, including an alternative organization, could be delivering.
When you say alternative organization, you mean a system of intelligence, like software intervention.
Or just different, or people organize differently. You see, again, you can imagine that it's just people doing the work.
Yeah, so like an S&op
Yes,
process.
or it can be just people but organized differently. And it can be people with software, a little bit of software, that would be people with Excel, or people with a lot of software, and that would be Lokad.
Or just one piece of software that happens to be powerful.
Yes, exactly. I mean, so you see, you have the whole spectrum of having more or less people. Again, when we are in the territory of intelligence, more people doesn't mean necessarily smarter results. I mean, as an analogy, you have to think, can you just bring 10 people on the street to play chess against a chess grandmaster, and will they win if you just pull 10 people from the street? The answer is nah, probably not. And you say, if you pull now 1,000 people from the streets, would those 1,000 people manage to beat the chess grandmaster? Still not. You see, but
at least not reliably. Yes.
not reliably.
Probably not even in reality.
Exactly, and that's where people tend to get confused, because when we think of unity, strength, and these sort of things, it is essentially for material task, not not task of intelligence. If the question is carry bricks from one place to another, yes, if there is 1,000 of us, we are going to carry a lot more bricks than if I was alone. But if it comes to create like the Mona Lisa, there can be 1,000 of us, and none of us will ever manage to get anything close to the Mona Lisa. You see, so that's why intelligence is so specific. Is that intelligence is incredibly elusive. It is difficult, and so what I'm saying is that I really want to anchor my definition into something that can ultimately be measured, the profits. And I am not making like a massive assumption that that it has anything to do specifically in the context of supply chain with people. I'm just saying that whatever generates the profits is good. How many people are actually involved in the final recipe is like, well, that will be something to be discovered. And that will be something that will be very much dependent on the state of your software technology.
Well, to build on this, and this is something that we actually started talking about off screen or off camera. We don't need to mention any names, but you mentioned to me today that you online received a bit of pushback for your own perspective on this very concept, the idea of AI. We'll get to that later. The idea of intelligence and the standard that you were trying to set within supply chain, and people were arguing, this is not your perspective.
Yes.
They were challenging, pushing back against you by making the claim supply chain is not essentially not evolved enough for the kind of paradigm that we're talking about here.
So, yes, but here we need to look at the general trend of technological progress. Work has been mechanized.
Yes.
And it's still being mechanized. It's something that has been in progress for literally millennia, that has accelerated tremendously for anything physical over the last 5 decades. So we have progressed. Even irrigation is a way to save labor. So there are plenty of things that took literally millennia to really get started. And in the last half century, the physical labor has undergone dramatic productivity gains. And it turned out
automation.
Yes, automation essentially.
What we're talking about.
But on every scale, people can think that sometimes it's not even smart automation. It can be just bigger machines. For example, container ship. It's still a guy, piloting the ship, except that there is 20,000 containers instead of, and thus, if you want to move the same containers with trucks, you need 20,000 truck drivers. So it's the container ship is not like a very, very advanced piece of technology, but just by making it very big, you just can boost productivity enormously. So so the productivity gains can be achieved sometimes with fancy technologies and sometimes with just brute force. For container ships are very much like brute forcing, gigantism, and batching. Now,
or even just to bring it then back to the supply chain
yes,
context.
now we are talking about white collars, and white collars with the emergence of essentially computing machines. Computers have been automating away white collars. And
at least the mundane aspects of the position,
many,
for sure.
and many aspects. I mean, people don't know. When my parents started,
Procter & Gamble.
At Procter & Gamble, there was still people who would be doing, arithmetics by hand. That was literally full-time jobs. You will have someone who will add numbers for all the money that needs to be paid for suppliers, and you would maintain the ledger of every supplier by hand. And then later, Excel came in, and later accounting packages came in, and then later ERPs came in to just, again, improve this process.
Make it more efficient, essentially.
Exactly. So we started to see productivity gains, not just for blue collars, people who were actually moving stuff around, building and crafting, but also for white collars. And the process is still ongoing, and lately it has accelerated a lot. And that's essentially the coding agent story of the last few months. And the interesting thing is that there are many people who online on LinkedIn, I was posting, I routinely post stuff, and there are a lot of people say, essentially the feedback, if I summarize, is
mostly positive.
Yeah, it's mostly positive. It's Jonas, you are advocating for something that is that will remain the future.
100 years in the future.
Yeah, it's maybe not 100, but you're a decade ahead. The automation, the world is not ready. Essentially, they say supply chains are not ready. The level of automation you're speaking of, what you advocate, what Lokad does. It's
present tense.
It is you're an outlier. Companies are not ready, and that's very interesting, because with coding agents, what I see is that nobody's ready, but it's coming. It's already there. And so and what the coding agents, Cloud Code, OpenAI Codex, and a few of their competitors are showing is that it doesn't matter if you're not ready. It's already there. And the bar is, that's what the world, including me, is discovering. And it's really a punch in the gut. The bar is so much higher than I thought. Those two,
actually, since you even wrote the book.
Yes, since I wrote those books.
Yeah, this question about LLMs that are now actually out of date. That gives you the scale of progress, which is not a slight on you. It's just that was before Codex.
And exactly, it is the progress is and it's absolutely exponential, and it's very strange. Even those AI companies, their marketing brochure is out of date. Usually, as a software vendor, you're always promising the moon. You're selling something that might be there next year. And here, they are actually, in the brochure, they are selling stuff that was already done 6 months ago. So even the marketing department are late compared to the actual capability of the software. And it's fantastic. You see, in the book, I describe general intelligence is a capacity of an intelligent system to improve itself. And guess what? For the last generation, so it's OPEX 4.6 and GPT 5.3, so Anthropic and OpenAI, respectively, guess what? In both cases, in both instances, software development teams are saying those coding agents have been literally writing the next version. Obviously under human supervision.
Of course.
But still, it means that it is the idea that we are getting close to a system capable of, a software system capable of rewriting itself is, I mean, in the book I was mentioning we have with LLMs a spark of general intelligence. Now it's not a spark anymore. We have like a little fire. It's not like a big fire yet, building, but it's clearly building. It's clearly building, and so we are not ready, I think it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. It doesn't, the market do not care if you're ready or not, because those tools are so brutally efficient that somewhere in the world there will be a competitor of yours that will be using those tools. That's it. So, and again, how long will your company last if you bring and that's the thing, is that it's the expression is bringing a sword to a gunfight, but that's more like you bring a sword, they bring a tank. And it's the magnitude is large. It is very much large. It is very large. So yes, we are. And by the way, this is a punch in the gut even for a software vendor like Lokad. We are not immune. It is also something that we take very, very seriously.
Well, so again, and we don't have to get too deep into the weeds on this, but there are some myths or some poorly conceived preconceptions that we would like to address here. So, for example, people selling the idea that, well, LLMs as large language models as a cure-all, a panacea, you might say, in supply chain. You point out that that's nonsense. Now, that is possibly a bit dated, but where do you now fall on the idea of AI in terms of supply chain decision making?
So, I mean, now considering that what we have with agents,
yes,
what is clear is that if you want to completely robotize the mainstream supply chain approach, agents are way beyond that. So you see,
but by that again, you mean
I mean again the
safety stock. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes, safety stock, ABC analysis, all the usual suspects. So if you want to take all the usual suspects, that would be the entire training materials from ASCM, coding agents are way beyond that. So if you embrace the mainstream supply chain theory, I would say there is not even a single question left on whether OpenAI Codex or Anthropic Claude Code can robotize that. Yes, it can. It can with ease. That's not even that is not even something really challenging. That's not even pushing those tools, not anymore.
Why aren't companies doing that then? If this is this is commercially available for $20 a month,
but
why
some
aren't
do.
billion-dollar companies?
No, but some do. Some
do. But again, we're talking about.
But again, you see,
the majority.
Again, markets are filters, not educators.
Yes.
So you should assume that new technologies will never be embraced. All companies never embrace technologies. I mean, 5% of them embrace new technology. The rest just go bankrupt. That is just the essence of markets. And it's very painful. It's Schumpeter, spotted that. It's the creative destruction of innovation. And you see, let's go back to e-commerce. Walmart could have crushed Amazon. All it took was to allocate a few engineers. Jeff Bezos was working in a garage. He had like nothing. He could not even hire the very good engineers. All of that came later. He could only afford, very early stage cheap engineers.
It was a small startup.
It's a small startup, and he had so many problems. Nothing was ready. He didn't have the connection with the banks. He didn't have the logistic networks. So it was a complete mess. And why did Amazon become such a giant? The answer is because everybody else dropped the ball. You see, nobody paid attention for like decades until it was way too late. And here, what we will see will be a repeat, because e-commerce was not a one-off. It happened. If you look at the end of the 19th century, it's very interesting. Electricity happens. Electricity is a game changer. If you have electricity,
I've noticed.
If you have electricity, for example, pick any factory, doesn't matter which factory. You put light bulbs, and suddenly your factory can operate 24 hours a day. So it is the conquest of the night. And that means that your investment into hard assets, if those machines are expensive, suddenly your machines will be working 24 hours a day instead of working, on average through the year, 12 hours a day. Because before light bulbs, operating a factory in the dark was just, or with candles, was just not possible. So you see, it is the sort of things where light bulbs, electricity, just adding a few light bulbs could suddenly double the rate of return of your factory. And guess what? Every single industrial company who missed the opportunity to add light bulbs in their factories went extinct. And the story has been repeating over and over and over. And that's the same, for example, for automotive companies. It was, if you look at the beginning of the 20th century, there was hundreds of brands in Europe, hundreds. And all those companies pretty much went extinct. And the reason is that the Taylorism, the idea of organizing your assembly line in a very specific way that maximizes, throughput and everything, what made the fortune of Ford. Well, any company who did not become like Ford, in a sense, went bankrupt, etc., etc. And here, so the question is that, is it real or not? Because you see that the thing is with tech is that people have been making those grandiose claims over and over for sometimes very shallow things, that all the buzzwords that I've been talking. So for example, the blockchain was like over the top for like complete nonsense. Closer to us, there was demand sensing. Again, it's like vaporware. There is no demand sensing technology. It's just a made up buzzword from some vendors, etc., etc. So the question is that, are we talking about something real? And my answer is, don't trust me. Just take Claude Code. That's what, by the way, I say to my colleagues at Lokad. Take one of those coding agents, use it, and within like an hour, you will be creating your first app.
Yeah,
and your mind will be blown away. Yeah. It is that easy. You don't have to trust Johannes Vermorel from Lokad that it's real. You can get the proof within 1 hour by just doing a test. And by the way, you have like dozens. I've seen dozens of YouTubers who are literally not even software people. They are literally discussing about like I don't know, cooking, politics, whatever. And they say, oh, by the way, I tried this thing and I built an app in an hour. And it's like a very fancy app, and they are blown away. So so I say this time, it is something real. It is something that will be extremely impacting. And that means that this idea of automating the white-collar job, from my statement, is the mainstream supply chain theory, as it is, can be completely robotized. The Lokad, by the way, the alternative theory, the one that I present in this book, not quite. Not quite. For reasons that are, by the way, still very valid, that I discuss in the book. For example, the problem of valuation, it is a very difficult problem. Your LLMs will just give you nonsense on that. So there are some, and I list some a certain list of very hard problems where I say those problems I do not expect soon an automated solution because they are just too hard, especially the wicked problems. And here, again, this book was written way before it's the LLMs became mainstream, and certainly before coding agents became mainstream. But I'm relatively pleased on this front. Those predictions were kind of correct. Claude Code will not solve properly yet. Same for OpenAI Codex yet. Those valuation problems, they are just too hard.
Well, this is the thing, because I think we've covered intelligence quite a bit and AI, but there are elements of economics that creep into the chapter, which again is natural because again supply chain and applied and a branch of applied economics, and that is the idea of, you mentioned assets earlier, that is the idea of OPEX v CAPEX, and the idea of treating supply chain more as an asset. So I just want to read a couple of quotes and then I'll let you take away. But you advocate that what we need to do is we need to turn operational expenditures into capital expenditures. The practice of supply chain is reified as a productive asset, or should be reified as a productive asset. It generates ongoing returns beyond its operating costs. Now, the idea of turning OPEX into CAPEX, I'm sure, appeals to a lot of people. You're not the first person to advance that as a concept. We should view it more as CAPEX. But you are advancing a technological way to make that happen. So in the book, and also just from your own perspective, what does that actually look like? What does the productive asset, what is it? What does it look like?
Again, it's, think blue collar, white collar. A blue collar, if you want to turn OPEX into CAPEX, you replace your worker with a machine. And instead of having to pay a salary, you will make an upfront investment, and then the machines will generate the same work for a much lower price. You see, that's the beauty of automation, is that you remove what is the scarcest resource of all, which is labor. You see, ultimately the scarcest resource of all is labor. And what I'm saying is that blue collar, white collars is two different kinds of labor, but it's labor not the same.
Yeah,
it's on one hand, blue collar, you are buying the arms of the motricity of an employee, and in the case of a white collar, you are essentially buying the cognition capabilities of this employee. But the bottom line is that for a long time, again, it was the idea of converting OPEX into CAPEX was a privy of blue collar stuff. You just buy a machine, and this machine does the physical labor. With computers, we started to enter the territory of white collar automation. And again, just think the clerks who are doing the arithmetics to have to track the ledgers have already been replaced by computers.
Yes.
And I'm saying this is just a continuation. And the interesting thing is that if you were talking about accounting is just essentially cost center. No company can ever become like super profitable because they have good accounting. It's only like if you have bad accounting.
Yeah, we've covered this last week.
Exactly. You will be dead. But fundamentally, again, if you don't have good accounting, money will be lost, stolen, bribed, whatever. So you need, it's survival for your company. You need double entry accounting. It's not an option. At least if you operate at any scale.
Yes.
Now, the interesting thing about supply chain is that if you play the game right, and that's what I defend. If you play the game right, supply chain is not a cost center; it's a profit center.
Okay.
So first, to make supply chain a profit center, you need to kind of understand why it can be a profit center. Because if you're stuck with and that's the mainstream supply chain perspective. The mainstream supply chain perspective says we have requirements, service levels, these sort of things, and then the game of supply chain is to minimize the cost to just meet this bar.
Yeah.
I say if you frame the problem like that, supply chain can never be anything but a cost center. So this is just a wrong framing. Again, that's a philosophical, sort of position. It's saying
also a financial one when you get onto the
exactly.
the meat and potatoes.
I approach supply chain as something where decisions can have a rate of return. This rate of return can be like very nice, meaning that you have a rate of return that $1 will become $2 after a while, or it will become $0.50 after a while. So what I'm saying is that when I say a profit center, I don't mean that your supply chain will make money. I just say it has a potential to. That's so you see, it's if you play the game badly, you will just lose money. Now, as if we embrace this idea that supply chain has a potential to be a profit center, then the question is, can this machine, computer with right software, generate automatically, machine style, those profits for me? And the answer that I'm giving is yes, and it's not even science fiction.
Well, so again, allow me to perhaps reframe the question. So when you say you want to reframe supply chain from a cost center to an asset, you're being quite literal in the sense that you will actually, an asset is it doesn't necessarily have to be something you hold. I mean, stocks are assets.
Yes.
But those are things like an asset by definition appreciates or depreciates. You are actually making the argument that you can convert essentially supply chain into a productive or appreciating asset.
Yes.
What does that mean though? Productive asset. What does that mean?
It means
what do I look at and go, there's my supply chain?
I mean, in practice, the thing will be software.
There
You
we
see,
go.
because
That's what you're buying.
you have other kind of productive assets that are just intellectual.
Yes.
It could be, for example, a brand.
Yes.
That's an asset, and obviously, if when Disney purchased, Marvel as a brand, that was a productive asset. It's something that can generate revenue and generate revenue. So this is what I'm saying is that this is in term. So it's an intellectual property asset, and what sort of asset? Well, it's not a patent, it's not a brand, it's a piece of software. It's code.
Yeah. It's code. Actually,
It's code.
Essentially, the
And
argument.
why is it exactly an asset? The short answer is because fundamentally you are playing a game that is very competitive. And thus, the idea is that if you play the game of supply chain right, it is something where you can have in your software and your logic something that is very unique to you,
Yes.
and that lets you play better than the
Yeah.
competitions.
Yeah.
Not necessarily everywhere all the time, but that gives you, a niche where you are the strongest. So that's why I say this becomes a productive asset, because it's something that, if done right, will generate profits and will help your company carve out in the market an island of superiority.
Yeah.
You see, because if you do not have an island of superiority with kind of a moat, then you're going to be replaced by competitors. By definition, a company that survives is a company that has an island within the market where they are not good. They are like the best. If they have like zero segment where they are the best, they will disappear.
Well, I used the term appreciate earlier and depreciate, because if we're talking about assets, that like a house either
Yes.
appreciates or depreciates. You buy a car, the moment you
Yes.
drive it off the lot, it has depreciated. It's secondhand. You buy a Rolex, a good one, a Submariner, you can appreciate in value. So things go up or they go down. Applied in terms of value, applied to this context, from my read of what you've described, you do turn the supply chain into code. It is an asset, and by actively maintaining it or improving it, it makes better decisions. Because again, it's not a
Yes.
static concept.
Yes.
And by allocating resources sensibly, you can make that, again, to say that's the line of code. I know it's a pen, but that's the line of code. That line of code produces better and better decisions that are more financially rewarding to you. It has appreciated. If I don't look at it for 6 months, it will produce worse decisions, or
Yes.
not as good as it was at the beginning. That asset has depreciated.
Yes.
Have I understood you correctly?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. And by the way, when I say that, for software, this game has been played for half a century
In other
by software vendors.
Yeah.
Microsoft has an asset called Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
They can let it depreciate, and then the software gets older and older, and people buy less and less license, or they can invest in it to make it better,
Yeah.
and gives people an incentive to buy the new versions.
Yeah.
You see, so and this is a productive asset, because every single day, tons of people are buying as a subscription or something else. They are buying paying Microsoft for a license for this software. So it is for Microsoft. This is an asset. This is something that generates revenues, and if they don't do anything, then it slowly but surely depreciates. So it's again. At some point, for example, some of the assets of Microsoft says, we are never going to reinvest again. That would be the Microsoft Access story. For Microsoft Access, for example, is still an asset with depreciating value. Some people still buy licenses for that, so it's still generating revenue for Microsoft, although it is essentially a curve, a trajectory on the decline. And Microsoft decided something like 15 years ago that they would not do further investment in Access, except minimal updates, just to make sure that the software keeps running. But that's it. No, like nothing really, no real evolution. Just minimal maintenance.
Well, I also want to be clear with the nomenclature, with the naming that we're using here, because again, we talk about supply chain. We say that it is invisible, it can't be touched. That's chapter 1. Can't be directly observed. We're now saying that it can be CAPEX, it can be an asset, an appreciating asset.
Yes.
But we also then talk about systems of intelligence. System of intelligence is the asset, which is then your supply chain. Are these all basically becoming synonymous?
No. I mean, the reason why introducing systems of intelligence is really it's really I would say a software centric discussion.
But it is the asset. That's what you're buying.
That's
where someone might get confused.
No. The system of intelligence is a fraction of the asset because
Okay.
you see, for the company,
That has to be explained.
yes, for the company, you need to have the people and the institutional knowledge to operate your asset. So it is to have really the asset, because we don't have Skynet, because it's not fully autonomous. You need people to operate the software. So if you think about your asset, you will need to include the people who are in charge of operating the software and maintaining the software as part of this asset.
Okay.
But the system of intelligence is really about clarifying the responsibility boundaries of different pieces of your applicative landscape. It's just about saying this piece of software should be responsible for this, but not that.
Yeah.
And you see,
But the system of intelligence generates the decisions, which is what we were just talking about in terms of the lines of code that generate decisions. So that's where I'm just trying to clarify use of
what I would
language.
typically describe as a system of intelligence is really a class of software.
Yeah.
I would not include in that the fact that you need people to maintain it, or that it's again, I have when I discuss systems of reports,
reports and
system
intelligence, yeah.
I'm really within
Chapter
it's
5.
really about, I have different sort of software,
Yes.
and I'm just classifying those software.
Yeah.
Here I'm taking so this is a very software centric perspective,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking what sort of features belong to the software or not.
Mhm.
And here I'm taking not a software centric perspective, I'm taking an economic perspective.
Mhm.
And it's here when I say asset, one way to think of it is the opposite, a liability.
Yeah.
Is it an asset or a liability?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way I'm thinking. So you see, this is an economic perspective, an economic stance. When I was discussing system of intelligence, it was a software stance. I know that there is a lot of overlap, but fundamentally, I'm not looking at the thing from the same angle.
Okay.
At the end of the day, there are massive overlaps. But again, it's a matter of perspective. Am I looking at the problem from a software angle, or am I looking at the problem as with a economic angle?
Okay. Well, then I do want to follow up on that, because again, from the perspective of a practitioner, there are sections in the chapter that are very technical. You start talking about stochastic gradient descents, for example. That's all cool. The thing that really stands out to me is the economics, because that's stuff that that's speaking my language. That's my day-to-day, money in, money out. And if I am somebody who picks up the book, starts reading, and says, I love this idea. I like the idea of finally converting from cost center to productive asset. What is my first step? Is it system of intelligence? Like, what's the linear path between, yes, I like this idea, and I'm making progress to institute it?
The problem is that there is no incrementalism. You cannot not have like a progression. You do not you do not linearly progress from horses to cars. That's the problem. Is that, again, here we are talking of something that is a radical departure from, let's say, conventional wisdom. Is that we need to embrace the idea that intelligence is a spectrum. And it's a spectrum within this spectrum, computers, machines are eating more and more of the spectrum of what was in the past the privy of the human mind. And now we have reached, with coding agents, a situation where we are talking where the philosophical position should be everything should be done by a piece of software intellectually, unless proven otherwise. You see, that is like it's something that is even stronger than what I put in my book, because I think those coding agents are now putting the bar so high that the correct intellectual stance should be, unless you can prove that this thing is beyond what an agent can do, well, we should assume that by default an agent can and will do it. You see, that is the correct stance. Just like transportation, unless you can prove me that carrying the stuff by hand is the right approach, by default, I will assume that using a vehicle for transportation is better. You need to prove me that not using a vehicle is the correct option. You see, and that's you see that the thing is that in the world of blue collars, this is so obvious that nowadays, yes, people look at anything repetitive and they would ask, can't we use a machine for that? You know, that would be their default thinking. If I tell you that there is, Charlie Chaplin modern times style, you have to, to strike a hammer 5,000 times a day, people would say, but surely there should be a machine. Nobody should be having a heavy hammer in their hand and hammering 5,000 times a day. It's obviously a machine is needed. And now, what has happened, and I think it happened last year, was with coding agent, is that now the situation is the correct philosophical paradigm is, until proven otherwise, for intellectual work, it should be a machine. And yes, it doesn't mean that human intellectual work has disappeared. But the correct philosophical stance should be. You automate everything until you have very good reasons not to.
Well, okay. So, to quote you, right on the heels of that, to quote you from chapter 6, at scale, unattended automation of the mundane or just the day-to-day simpler stuff, the mundane operational decisions has been within reach in supply chain for well over a decade.
Yes.
Now, just 2 points to this question. I'll let you address them in sequence. Excuse me. One, operationally, what does unattended mean? Like, if you're talking about end to end, like, just sketch that out for me. But also, where do humans fit in that if something goes wrong?
So unattended means that.
And you can take an example, I should say.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to take a company to sketch it out.
That any kind of normal business day, think of Walmart, it's just a normal business day. There is nothing really extravagant going on. Yep. Yes, the news may say that the US has some geopolitical woes somewhere in the world, and there is a dictator that is doing crap somewhere in the world. But fundamentally, just think of, the Walmart sort of perspective. Today is a reasonable, normal day in the US. There is nothing really extravagant happening. It's not like the snowstorm of the century. Yeah. It's just kind of normal weather,
a normal day,
thing.
An average day.
Yeah, it's a normal day. And what I'm saying is that if it's like a day that feels like just like any of the other days, and you had like 100 of those days in the year already, then the system, your system of intelligence, this piece of software, should be able to take all the supply chain decisions on your behalf unattended. So, and it should do it, not like with people who press a button to say yes, yes, yes. It takes the decisions, and you have enough confidence. So the system has been proven sufficiently reliable so that you can actually let the system do it for you. And, people would say, can we trust a computer with that? And the answer is absolutely. There is plenty. For example, your ABS in your car, anti-braking system, it's taking an incredibly life-threatening decision. Yeah. It's going to decide that you are braking too much. You see, it's literally going to. It's not a system to brake more. It's a system to brake less, so that your wheels don't start slipping on the road. So fundamentally, if this ABS malfunction, it means that you would lose your brakes. So obviously this is like a very life-endangering system, because it's literally at the point you need it the most that it has to be super, super critically reliable. We had these sort of things for decades. It's a non-issue with granted that we have proper engineering. And so what I'm saying is that supply chain, by definition, most days are mundane. Otherwise, we have the wrong definition of mundane. So I would say a system like probably at least 19 days out of 20. Again, that's a statement. That's like a guideline. Should be able to operate completely unattended. If you need to step in more than twice a month, then you have a problem. Yes, there will be months that are really, really crazy. Yes, like once a decade, you have like a crazy month where seemingly impossible things happen in the same month. But again, if we go to normality, most days are normal. Your system should just work completely unattended. And what do I mean by unattended is that if at the end of the day you look back at those decisions, they're already
what
gone.
To
they
buy,
are done.
when, what quantity,
Exactly.
you send it where,
and you say,
when. Yes,
it was good. It was good. Nothing to see. It was good. It worked just as expected. There is nothing. There is nothing that I regret. The system operated exactly as it should, and that's it.
Well, so that's the exception that addresses the idea of like what happens when exceptions arise. So again, like you buy a Rolex, you buy it as an asset. Something goes wrong, well then you go to you call a watch repairman. That's fine. In terms of improving the asset, because again earlier you stated that asset, or you agreed that asset can appreciate. Appreciate means gets better.
Yes.
If it's getting better, presumably that is from some sort of human intervention at some node in that process. So
Absolutely.
Sketch out how that works for the listeners.
Again, we are in the software paradigm, so it's about gradually refactoring your software so that it becomes a better version of itself. You need to have, it is an engineering problem, a software engineering problem.
It's not a human insight problem.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I'm saying, is that it is a creative problem.
Yes.
It is fundamentally something where you will have to invent edges against your competitor, so you will have to do things that your competitor do not. It's a wicked problem. It's not, there is no correct solution. A solution might be only correct because your competitors are not doing it yet. If they do, you need to differentiate. So we are in the territory of the wicked problems, of the open problems, of the problems that do not have what I described, formal boundaries. And yes, that's the privy of the human mind, at least for now. But here we have like a clear understanding why we need a human mind. It's because those problems are hyper hard. Truly, they cannot be brute forced. They cannot be enumerated.
So for example, sketch an example if you can. Like you're a retail company, whatever. You're an aerospace MRO. Pick anything. Any example of where you have a productive asset and a person at that company helps improve that asset.
So, for example, you would say, can I establish a partnership with one of my supplier and frame the partnership in such a way that I have a privileged access on the market to have access to something at a cost that is lower than anybody else.
Okay.
You see, it's, what does this partnership look like? Can be anything. Can be a joint venture, can be building a train line from this supplier to...
These sound strategic, these insights.
Yes, it can be anything. Can be me handing over one of my technology to this supplier to make them better with a contract. It can be anything. Can be the supplier investing in my company, can be just the teams going in a retreat together every month. It can take so many forms. It is not a proposition that can be enumerated with option A, option B, option C. No, it's like possibilities are endless.
Okay. And in terms of, so again, to take an example, this is how I kind of framed it, and perhaps I'm wrong, you can correct me, but like if you're in a situation where you're at the end of the day, so you took the example of Walmart, you're at the end of the day, you look back, things could have been good, but you know what, I actually think that decision could have been slightly higher because that reflects something that I kind of know about that supplier or that store. Like I just happen to have a very unique human insight into that. That can be, if that's a repeatable event or a recurring event, that can be folded into the code or expressed as code, absorbed into this asset, and then in future, that has now trained the model to produce decisions, and you don't have to repeatedly make that change.
Yes, it's exactly the way Microsoft improved Microsoft Excel. You see, they look at what people say, their feedback, and if they see that something comes up very frequently, then at some point they decide to act and say, well, this is not noise, this is not just a fluke, this is actually fundamentally correct feedback about the product, and thus we modify the products in this direction. And you see here, the main problem is that you at the end of the day, you can see many area where this decision could have been better. But the problem is that at the end of the day, you know more than the software did at the beginning of the day. So you have more information. So you have to sort out what is like, what is your genuine insight for the solution versus survival bias, which is just you have like post-mortem information that wasn't available to your system of intelligence at the beginning of the day. So you cannot blame this system for being ignorant about what only unfolded during the day.
Okay. Well, we've been going for just about an hour, so I do want to start wrapping up a little bit. But something that I think is worth clarifying is, if supply chain becomes an asset, what department owns that asset? You can say the company, but where does that show up? Like, what is that? IT? Is it finance?
Again,
is that,
the problem is that with the automation of white collars, so all the white collar jobs are being automated, and now, I mean, that for me that was evident, even 20 years ago. But now, and by the way, I have even a lecture where I state, it's like the second lecture, I state the 21st century will be the century of the mechanization of the white collar job. That's literally my introducing statement. So bottom line, this idea that we are going to convert companies, their divisions, into mini software companies for every single department, it's coming. It's literally, it has been coming for a long time, and now it's coming strong. So the problem is that if you say software belongs to IT, what is the end game of that? IT run the entire company. So
we don't want that.
The point is that we don't want that, is that it makes the notion of IT meaningless. Because you see, first, if you say I have legal, marketing, supply chain, whatever, it's a division of labor. You see, it is a division of labor. It's a way to slice and dice people. So if you say everything goes into IT, then okay, so that means that IT is now the company. And then the question becomes, how do I slice IT? You see, I'm just pushing the problem, kicking the can. It just, then if I put everything in IT, why not? But then the question will be, how do I slice IT? So what I'm saying is that putting everything in IT makes the world IT meaningless. It's just saying then IT becomes like the company. So so if we want to preserve words that have a meaning, then the question is, it cannot be everything goes to IT, because then again we are losing this proposition. Just the division of labor is absent, so our words stop having any meaning. So what I'm saying is that, well, we are in this world where pretty much anywhere where you used to have tons of white collars, now you're going to have a lot of software instead. And the interesting thing is that coding agents give a fascinating aspect on what a future company would look like. It will be maybe every single division will have people operating coding agents to create their own assets for their own division. It means that you have a legal department. Those people, they are using agents to operate at scale and be extremely productive. Same will be for HR. Same will be for every single division. So what I'm saying is that if you say that supply chain just becomes essentially a software game, and that's what I advocate in this book, then it just means that the division of supply chain just become kind of a specialized software division within the company. And their goal is to create this, to operate, maintain, and develop an asset that is productive and that generate profits by playing the game of supply chain very profitably. And this will be a parallel track, because marketing will play the exact same game, and they will have the same problem, and they will need to also develop their own productive assets, so that at the sort of branding level, market awareness level, they cultivate something that is generating money for the company, again, with a real productive assets, where the human labor force is still there, but it is not dominant. You see, that's kind of the future of many large corporations. it is already the case for manufacturing companies. Most manufacturing companies, what dominates is not the labor component. If you look at Nvidia, their spending in labor is not dominant. What dominates is capital. The price of the machines that they operate, that is way more significant than the blue collars that they operate. And if you go to Microsoft, the valuation of their assets, software assets, is much higher than the price that they pay for the employees. So fundamentally, software companies have been operating in this paradigm for decades, which is the valuation of your intangible software assets are literally the bulk of what you do. And yes, you pay salaries on top of that, good salaries for software engineer, but that represent, comparatively to your asset, they're small. And now we are just looking at the next stage where pretty much all companies start to become a little bit more like software companies. And that is a strange world, but I would also say that it is a world where a lot of people had seen this world coming for decades. So it's not like super new either.
All right. Well, my last question, and it kind of comes full circle to the idea of the supply chain practitioner reading this. For the 10 million or so supply chain practitioners who might get to the end of chapter 6, what are they supposed to take away from what you have just said?
They need to rethink about their own human intelligence and where is their value add compared to machine intelligence. That's exactly the question that 2 centuries ago, blue collars were asked this very same question. What is your added value? And by the way, there are plenty of excellent answers. You have a lot of people who, with their hands, are still being valued by the market quite a lot. If you go to a grand restaurant in Paris, you have a chef. The chef is a blue collar, and usually this chef is earning very well his life. So there are plenty of very good answers. The answer is not pain and misery. The answer is you have chefs who are earning, who are now, if you look at the people who are earning the most money in France, many of those chefs are, quite high in terms of percentile of wealth compared to the general population. But nevertheless, this is a real question that needs to be addressed, is all workers, blue collars, have been forced to ask themselves the question, what is my value compared to the machine? And now white collars have the exact, need to really think about what is their value compared to machine intelligence. It's and my quick, I would say, reassurance is don't worry, you still have plenty of room, but it's going to be different. And you just need to think about that carefully and not assume that the world is going to stay the same, because it's really not.
So if I were to summarize that, the general advice 10 years ago was learn to code, and today it's learn to cook.
Again, or learn to meta code, because a coding agent is just, it's just coding for you at a much greater speed. If you already knew how to code, it's good. It's good. I mean, people who already know how to code, guess what? They are the one that have, for them, it is the easiest to adopt those technologies. So you see, it's just that the mix of skills, what you need to learn extra, becomes kind of different.
Yes.
But fundamentally, being very knowledgeable about, for example, coding, doesn't make you inefficient to go to the next stage of those revolution. Quite the contrary. So 10 years ago, learning to code would have been a good advice. It's still, by the way, good advice. If you want to really embrace coding agents, it's better if you yourself are a little bit fluent, at least with a programming mindset.
Yes.
The syntax of languages are much less relevant. But again, the world is vast. Opportunities are very, very numerous. So I cannot suggest, one size fits all. It will be a journey that will be very personal, just like, again, 2 centuries ago, blue collars who were like mechanized away. Some decided to go a path of becoming, an artist. Some became something completely different, and etc. etc. There is like a zillion different paths. But you need to pay attention because the mechanization of basic, mundane, intellectual operations, it's already there. It's already there.
All right. Well, Johannes, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. I'll see you soon for Chapter 7. And to you for watching, thank you very much for your time. As always, I say it every single week, every single video. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to reach out to Johannes and me. The easiest way is on LinkedIn. Or failing that, you can send us an email at contact@lokad.com. And with that, we'll see you for Chapter 7 next time. And yeah, get back to work.